welcome to Build with AI playlist. In this playlist, we will build a simple application. We will get a Gemini AI key and we will try to test this API with our Node.js server. And later on, we will also build a web Angular frontend for this and we will try to simulate a simple chat application. So let's get started. Hello. So the next step is we need to capture our Google AI API key. First thing is you need to log into aistudio.google.com and here you have option to select get API key, which will take us to this section where you can see your existing API keys or you can create a new one. So for this demo, let's create a new one. You can select your existing project or create a new one and then add into key here. So I'm selecting my API key in this project and let it generate the key. And once key is generated, I have to copy this. And this is very important. You should not share this with anyone and do not check in your code repo as well. So once I get the key, I will save it in a place and I will use it. And let's go to next section. Thank you. Hi. So let's create a simple Node.js server and with Express for the REST endpoints. So I will run this command, which will initialize the project. And you can see we have the default project with cores and Express because while creating the application, I said npm init and install the Express and cores. Cool. Now what we have to do is we have to use cursor to do some kind of vibe coding. So what I will try to do is I will ask him to do like set up TypeScript for this project, then generate server.ts file, and in this server.ts file add a post endpoint called API/chat, which shall accept a JSON object in request body adds message string. Okay, and for now return the mock result, and that's it. Let's see what it does. So the first thing it's trying to do is setting up the TypeScript configuration. That means it has to generate the tsconfig file. It has to install packages. So let's see what it's trying to do now. And as you can see, there are some types being installed for Express, Core, and Node. Then he has created the tsconfig file and he's trying to create a new folder called src. And within src, let's see what it does in src folder. So far it's empty, and now he's trying to create the file now there, server.ts. Okay. So, and it's installing TypeScript dependencies. So let it install. As you can see, there are some kind of errors for resolving the packages. So after this npm install, there should not be any errors. And he's trying to run the application. Let's see what it does. And looks like there are no errors and everything is set up. Perfect. He's giving the summary what he did. And what we can do now is we keep all the requests and we say npm run dev. So dev server has started on port 3000. So let's test this endpoint. First thing is health. Let's test the health endpoint. I will use the Postman extension within cursor. This is also available in VS Code. So if I send the request, I can see status is okay, Gemini server is running and timestamp. Perfect. Next, I want to test the chat endpoint. So for chat endpoint, I need a body like this. So let me take the body. I will go here, set row, and let me just make it a little bit here. So in the filter, I want to select the JSON object and I want to send it. Again, it failed because I was sending the get, but we have the post request. And we should have some mock information now. Okay, so now we got a response. So now let's see here. So we got a joke here from our server, and that server is sending the response based on this random function here. So it has like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 responses. So if I send it one more time, it should send me another one and keep sending me the same one. And there is another one. Yeah, perfect. So looks like our setup is ready now. We have the basic application setup. So next step, we will set up our Gemini AI here. Thank you. Hello. Now is the fun part. Now we will integrate our Gemini AI into a Node.js application. If you remember, this is a place where we created our API key, that is aistudio.google.com. Here you can find this API quick start guide where you can install the packages based on your programming language. Since we are using Node.js, we have to install this package, which I will just copy and I will go back and install here. As you can see, I have already installed it. So that package step is done. And the next step is we have to create object of the Google Gen AI. So if I go to the server, you can see I have this object installation part here, and we need to import it from the Google Gen AI package. The most important thing is this. This package reads an environment variable called Gemini API Key from the environment where application is running. So you cannot just hardcode and pass it here. Since we are using Node.js, what we can do, we can create a .environment file, and in this file we can set this environment, and I will set my API key here. I will delete this API key, so that's why I'm able to put here and show in video, but in real life you should not share this API key with anyone else. Okay, since we have set this variable here, we want to make sure that whenever we start the application, we need to load this environment. For that, we can install a package called .env. So what it will do is it will provide us a package called .env, and we will call a function called config. So whenever we start application, this function will load all the environment variables from .environment file. And we will add one console.log here, which will check whether the Gemini key is set or not. Okay, I think with this, we can try to run our application and see if everything works. npm run dev, and there are no errors. And most important thing is API key is working. We can test it. Let me try to cut this, save the environment file, and run it again. And it should say that, hey, environment key is not set. So let me put it back and start application. And the next step we have to do is, if we go back to the example here, here is example how to call API. So let's go to our mock responses. We don't need mock responses anymore. So what we will do is we will comment it out, and we will take, let's comment out response again. And it says async, so we have to mark it as async. And here, let me hard code. Remove that hard coded message, and we have to put message from our request body. If you remember, we were calling the API using an object with a key as a message. So we want to pass this message into this content. And what we will do, we will just return response dot text. I think it was text, but we need to create object. So not like this. We will say this is Gemini response, and let's uncomment our previous response object. And here we can put response as just response dot text. So here we can say response dot text. That's it. Here it's string, and we have to mark the default values. So let's get rid of the commented code. So what did we change? We have added this generate content, and we are passing the result to the, okay, this is also nice, to the response. So now let's start the application again. Case set. Okay. And let's try to hit the API now. And you can see we are getting the response, and we can check if our changes has been applied or not. So we can test again. Let me run the command again and see what happens. So application is running again. Let's go to our chat. And now we are sending the message like, hey, how are you? And let's see what Gemini responds in the response body. You can see it's sending us the JSON object. Hello, I'm AI, blah, 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 blah. Let's try to change the question. We will say, tell me a funny joke about web developers. Let's see what it says. And it's going through. Okay. Taking a bit, huh? Must be thinking. Okay, so we got a joke. Why did the web developer break up with their CSS? Because they had too many unresolved issues, and it kept pushing them to the left. Funny. Okay, so that's the main part that we wanted to see, that when we call the message, our AI response is generated and sent as a response. I wanted to show one more thing, which is like, I want some big response. So give me a report of at least, let's say, 15 lines about AI development. The thing I wanted to show is that, let me just minimize this part here and maximize the response. What I want to show is that when we send a message, right, we are getting the response in one go. But most of you have tried this ChatGPT. And when you ask a question, you get a response, which is like as if someone is typing, right? So you get few words, again, few words, and it's a generation. So what we can do now, we can try to have the same effect here. So now that effect of having response as a stream is what makes the output of ChatGPT or any other chatbot looks like, okay, you are getting the response. We will do this in our next video. Thank you. Hello. So far, we are able to call the Node.js endpoint, and which invoke our Gemini AI SDK to return the result. So we can just hit it again, as we can call the endpoint. We have asked him to generate 15 lines on AI development. And as you can see, a request is being through. And once it is done, we get a single response object. And this single response object contains all the results that we are looking for. However, if you have seen the ChatGPT or any OpenAI or Gemini, when you ask for some question, the answer is always like it's continuous stream. You get few words, then there is a pause, then again there is a few words. That means it's not one response, but it's a stream of responses. So in this video, we will see how we can convert our single response into continuous stream of responses. For that, what we have to do is, first thing we have to see that we are calling this AI model dot generate content method. This method from AI returns a response in a single object. That's why we are getting response here. To get a response in a stream, we need to call another endpoint called generate content stream. So what we have to do is we have to replace this into stream. So we got a stream here, and this will be a chunk. So it's a async generator, so there will be a kind of loop which we have to address. So what we have to do now is like I will just comment out the response sending code which we had earlier, and now what we need is like we need a for loop. So what we need is like Gemini response, it will send us this object, and here is the chunk. So each chunk will contain some partial result. We will take this result and we will just keep sending to the response object. So if you notice, earlier we were sending response like response.json and the whole object was sent. However, here we are writing to the stream. So we keep writing to the stream until the response is finished here in the for loop. If you notice, we are calling this await here so that we won't skip to the next line until this loop is finished. And once everything is written to the stream, finally we write, okay, data done, and we mark response as done. So this will be the end of our communication. However, we need to say that this request has to abide the headers, meaning we have to set some headers here so that the browser or postman, they know how response is being sent. So here in the header, we are going to set the content type into text event stream, not just like applications like JSON, but text event stream. And these are just like some cache control that we can ignore. But here is a connection header. So this connection header says, do not close the request. I will send you more data. And with this, we should be able to generate the stream now. So now I will just stop the server, restart again. And once it is up, yeah, I think it's up now. We will send the same message to the Gemini AI, and let's send it. And now we should be able to see response in terms of stream now. So you see here there is a 1 2 3. This is like a stream that is sent. When we call this from the Angular or any web application, we can check in the network panel how the stream is sent. In this Postman extension, it's not very visible what's happening, but here you can see like in the first response, there is a data object and there is a content which is like some partial here. You can see here this text is broken and is continued here. It's broken and continued here, and so on. And at the end, it marks done and request is finished. So this will give our UI the actual ChatGPT like experience, like user is typing a question and a response is getting stream of data. So in next section, we will set up the Angular front end where we call this endpoint and show this information. Thank you. Hello. So far, we are able to run our Node.js server, call the Gemini API. We got the response from the Gemini AI, sent it as a one single response object, and then we refactored it to send the response as an event stream. We verified it in the Postman extension where we sent a message and we can see the information is sent into the chunk. In this video, we will create a front end in Angular and we will try to call the same API and see in the output. So I have already built one application for this and we will just walk through the output and the code. So here is the simple Gemini kind of chat UI, a very simple one. But here we want to focus on the functionality than the UI. So what we will do is we will pass the same question to the UI chat that we are passing to the Postman. So now I have put my question here, the same, give me a report of at least 15 lines about AI development. And let me send now. So here is my network tab where I want to inspect how chat API is calling and how its result is sent. So as you can see, the first pre-flight is done and now there is a chat and you can see the output now. If you notice, it was not a single object. It was like a stream of the response. Let me change it to something else. Now make it a story of 50 lines with some creativity. The goal is that I want to have more data so that we can see the effect. Let me refresh actually so that we can have the fresh response and request. So let me send this one and it's calling the API. API is still pending. And now let's see what happens. And we're getting the data now. Okay. So let's open this request. And if you notice here, we have the payload and event stream. And this is what makes it like a typing effect. So here we are not using some CSS strict to show that is being typed. You can see here the response is sent into a chunk, and in Chrome's event in network tab, you can also see whenever there is a header set. If remember, we set this header called app content type is a text event stream. That is why we are able to get, like here we call this chat and here is applic content type. So based on that, Chrome decide, okay, if it is an event stream, I will show this tab. And here you can see that we are getting this data in these kind of messages and they are sent to the UI like this. Okay, and we can just walk through the code now. So what is happening here? Okay, so what do we have? We have a chat container application. In chat container application, we have two components, chat input, that is this one. If we notice the selector here, this is our chat input component, and there should be a component called message list. Yeah. So we have two components here. And let me go to the Angular code again. So when we are in the chat input, user types something in this content area and press on the send button. We call message service.send message. And in this message, we are calling Gemini service here, which is a regular Angular service, just named as a Gemini service, nothing special here. Is calling our API chat here. But the trick is we are not calling HTTP client here. We are calling fetch, because when you have an event stream, the HTTP fetch doesn't work. It just take the response in one goal and just send it over. However, with newer version, it's being supported. But since we want to keep this as a backward compatible, we have this example with observable calling API using fetch, and fetch supports event streaming. So that's why whenever there is a data from API as a stream, the fetch will get invoked, an observable will have the new data, and that data will be, whoever is consuming that, he will get notified. And that's why in the UI, we are able to see that there was a chat effect. Like, tell me about a different topic. And send, there might be, now there is another response being sent now. Here, you can see here, the response is sent here. So what we do, we call this API and we call the send message. So this is how it works. Now the question is a message list. If we go back to our container, we have the chat message list. And here we are calling message service.get messages. And get messages is returning the array of message entries, but as a signal. So it's a new construct of signal, not observable. And this message is here. It's defined on a service level. When we call the Gemini service, we get a subscribe, and that subscribe, whenever there is a next data stream output, we take the response and we concatenate it with this Gemini content, and we update our signal. And when we update our signal, the component get notified and the rendering happens here. If you notice, there is no change detection dot detect changes or anything because we are using signal based approach here. So that's pretty much it. The whole code is a little bit more boilerplate because of the style and some stuff around it. But the core important part is this one, like how to call the API with the fetch and observable, and how to concatenate them and show it to the UI. Thank you.